common, everyday thing for women to receive unsolicited penises.
And the trouble with something being very common is it becomes acceptable. And it's not acceptable. It absolutely isn't acceptable.
Yeah, no, it's not okay. It's not okay.
It's very kind of intrusive and very violating.
Sometimes I feel really angry. Disgust is another emotion. Sometimes I just simply roll my eyes and get on with my day without even flinching. This shows how common dick pics have become.
The man was so close to me. It was so intimidating. It was terrifying. I could feel my phone vibrating against my ear as he sent me more images.
I just felt totally violated.
I don't see how the government thinks the guard of glass on a screen differentiates the impact of a man in a Mac walking down the street, suddenly opening it and exposing himself.
So my name is Karen Wybrow. I'm a women's safety consultant, and I've also been a victim of cyberflashing on many occasions. I think the first time it happened where I really understood what was happening actually was being on a tube a couple of years ago, just going out for the evening in London, and I kept getting an airdrop request coming up on my phone asking me to accept an image. And at this point, I'd kind of realised that this was a method that people used to send like unsolicited pictures. So I kept declining that request. And the carriage wasn't even that busy. So I could actually see who I think it was who was trying to send this image. And there was a guy sat kind of diagonally opposite. And he was sort of looking at his phone, doing something, and then looking up at me, but also, I think, looking at other people as well to see if anybody was going to react to what he was trying to send. And I declined it maybe like 4 or 5 times. And then eventually, fortunately, he got off the train before me. So I kind of felt safer once that had happened. I think if I'd got off the train before him, I would have then been concerned about what he was going to do.
So my name's Killian. I'm 23 years old. I'm originally from France. I'm a gay man, so that will be interesting from my point of view. I used to get some on a gay dating app. So on these apps, like people might be looking for to hook up, so that's completely fine. Like do what you want, but then there's ways to do it. I think for me at least, like you always introduce yourself and then you do what you want and then you ask someone if they're okay with that, because yeah, for me it's not. I don't think it's okay to just send this out of the blue. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Every time I'm on television talking about that men need to stop killing and raping us, I get sent about 15 penises to my Instagram or my Twitter. Mostly I don't look at them. And also in my case, I'm 45. My Instagram is books and my dog. And it's not that I'm asking for it. It's just so commonplace that a reaction to a woman speaking publicly is shut her up with your penis. And that's what we need to work on.
I have received unsolicited pictures on Snapchat and Kik, which used to be like WhatsApp at one point. I was really young when it happened, around 13 or 14 years old. So to be honest, I didn't really know how to react. I told my friends and we laughed about it at the time, but looking back, it feels like a really scary thing.
the Common Select Committee got concerned about sexual harassment in schools, and they asked Ofsted to do an urgent review. So that was carried out in 2021, and Ofsted discovered that 90% of the respondents, of girls, had experienced sexual harassment and received sexual images, and 50% of boys. And they reported that sexual harassment had become so normal and so happening so often, it had become what they called commonplace. I saw the chair of the report being interviewed, and she was asked, why has this become so prevalent in schools? And she said that it's because most schools were actually in denial. Their view was, oh, that sort of thing doesn't happen here. And that really rang a chord with me, because that's the kind of phrase I hear from parents. Oh, my child doesn't do that sort of thing. Oh, my child that wouldn't be exposed to that sort of thing. I find parents generally very unaware of the easy access of pornography now amongst young adults and teenagers. And so I think the schools themselves need to become a lot more aware of what's happening, because the worry about it becoming commonplace is that the children don't report anything, because it's happening so often that the schools probably don't know even if it's happening, and certainly not to the degree to which it's happening.
I'm Catherine Hull. I'm a Professor of Criminology and Criminal Justice at City University London. So online sexual abuse, firstly, very little of that comes to police attention. So the majority of victims will not report that. So it doesn't tend to come into policing as much. Then police organisations, often they have a system to allocate who will look into the case. And if something is a rape or what's called a serious sexual offence, it might go to a specialist unit, or it might go to the CID department, that's the Criminal Investigations Department. Lower level offences, and we need to acknowledge here that sexual offences is never low level, but in that sphere of, and police measure that along the lines of what sentences might be attached to, they're often handled on borrow. So that means they're handled by investigators who are not specialist investigators, who don't have normally any specialist training, and they're handled alongside a vast array of different crimes. So they may be handled alongside shoplifting and muggings. So just from where policing situates who would investigate it, they clearly don't carry the same status as a rape or a contact sexual offence that's termed a serious sexual offence has. So there is a certain level of hierarchy here.
So I was always kind of assuming so, but then for me, like, I mean, I've had so many like girlfriends that told me that this happened to them. So it is illegal, but then how is it controlled? You know, like how can I imagine if people do it, it's because they can get away with it. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble is there is just no recourse, and when there's no recourse, the victim feels that there's no control. They have no control over what's happening to them, and that's really important. And especially on your phone, I mean, your phone is so personal, and especially for a young person, their whole life revolves around their phone pretty much. And so for that to be invaded, for that not to be a safe space for them, is really has a bad impact. And they just know that there's going to be no recourse. They know that nothing happens about this sort of thing. They know the person doesn't get traced, and even if they do, all they have to say is, oh, I didn't mean you any harm.
So there are numerous reasons why not to complain, but there are some that particularly stand out, perhaps more to victims of online image-based sexual abuse and so forth, is we know some victims don't report because they think what happened to them is not serious enough for police to deal with, and it's almost so normalised that young girls especially, they feel like this is something that's part of life, this happens, and it doesn't meet a threshold that's serious enough to report. There is often barriers around feeling guilt or shame that maybe you have done something that has brought this upon you. So victims will often self-blame, and perpetrators will also actively seek to do things for a victim to self-blame, because it's one of their best protections of being found out, is to act in ways that will manipulate victims into not reporting because they think they themselves are in some way at fault, even though you never are. It's the perpetrator who perpetrates it, it's never the victim. There is worry about implications from reporting, so it might be from the perpetrators or others, that you will face consequences. And then, of course, there is the issue of trust in the police. So, especially in recent years, women's trust in the police has really been stretched and in many places broken. For victims from racially minoritized backgrounds, that's especially so. When you have a sense that policing is not for you, it's done to you or against you, or they would not understand or they would not take you seriously, then would you report something that's so intimate that you might not have told anybody? Would you report that to a police force where you don't trust? So that is surely another factor that will play a part.
With a lot of sexual violence, you know, if it's not reported, there's not the data there, then there won't be the action taken. So, you know, that's the case with lots and lots of crimes, but very much so with this. I think that it must be hugely underreported. Therefore, if people aren't reporting it, the police will just say we don't have the data for it, there isn't the pressure on the government then. I mean, there's been some really good work done recently, obviously, with Georgia Harrison's case against Stephen Bear, and I think, you know, a celebrity coming out and talking about it seems to have a big impact, but it shouldn't really take that, should it? You know, it shouldn't take for an influencer to come out and hit the headlines. These companies should be doing it because it's a protection and duty of care of their users.
With Bumble's private detector, you can bat away unsolicited pics or keep the ones you want.
So what private detector does is it automatically detects and blurs potential lewd images, and ultimately giving back viewers the agency to decide if they want to see it or if they don't want to see it. So, you know, we want to empower people to speak up and not feel silenced when they receive imagery that's quite uncomfortable. And we also proactively prompt our users to unmatch if they feel that they have made a connection with someone that is, you know, making them uncomfortable. We don't just want to safeguard the community at Bumble Inc. We want to go beyond the Bumble Inc. community. So that's how we decided to open source private detector. Our intention here was really to, you know, connect with like-minded people across the tech community to, you know, join forces and kind of combat the fight against cyberflashing.
For starters, safety and privacy should go hand in hand. It should not clash. It should not be two different parallel lines. There's a lot of responsibility that is being passed on to the tech companies, and that's additional task for them. So they do not want to take that up. I would see it in that way. The other concern that I agree with the tech companies is about the dilution of the end-to-end encryption. That is something that is being spoken about. There has been a lot of open letters that has been sent to the UK government by the industry, where you see organizations like WhatsApp, Apple, Signal saying that if this end-to-end encryption where the organization or the watchdog Ofcom can fine them up to, I think, 18 million pounds. So when this kind of money is involved, it kind of deters tech companies to function or to run their business in countries like UK, because they feel that end-to-end encryption protects the privacy of a lot of citizens, which I agree that it does. But on the sidelines, they also should have something like Bumble has. So there can be different ways of doing it, but the tech companies are not taking initiative. But I also agree on their perspective of diluting the end-to-end encryption, which they have shown a united front, which can weaken the end-to-end encryption, which can lead to increased surveillance of journalists, of human rights activists, because when you're trying to resolve one issue of going through each and every private messages or each and every image that goes through like a lot of citizens who are using these platforms, but you are also trying increasing other issues of surveillance which are state sponsored. So you have to create a balance, and it is on the onus of the government and the tech companies that you have to find a solution where you can resolve these issues of cyber flashing and you still have your end-to-end encryption intact.
Well, my name is Baroness Lauralee Burt. I'm a working peer in the House of Lords. I speak on behalf of my party, which is the Liberal Democrats, and my spokesmanship is Women and Equalities. There are one or two things that so incensed me about the way that it doesn't originate from the point of view of women. And there was cyber flashing. There's also something called Vorg, which is not a space creature, but it's violence against women and girls. So I produced one amendment and I supported another one in the name of Baroness Morgan of Coates, which is about requiring the all the platform holders to produce a code of conduct on how they would protect women and girls, because I think that the people who wrote this bill did not write it from the point of view of women. I've had the argument on 2 occasions now with the Minister. I've had the argument with the Law Commission. So basically they see it differently. The government, in fairness to them, have introduced elements of cyber flashing, which is really good. But unfortunately, they didn't look at it from the point of view of the girls who are receiving this abuse. So I think it's a great shame, and considering how much of it they're getting, our idea was to make it a consent-based thing. So because it's intent-based at the moment, you have to satisfy various criteria.
But what is stopping from online safety bill from passing into a law?
Well, nothing. When a bill starts in the Commons, it tends to get shoved through. Then it comes to the Lords, and we kind of take it apart, put loads and loads of amendments in there to try and make it better. So that's what we are doing now. We all agree we need it. We just want it to be the best.